In the heart of Lagos, nestled in the wealthy neighborhood of Ikoyi, stood a grand mansion with high gates, marble floors, and chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds. This mansion belonged to the Ademoyi family, one of the richest families in Nigeria. Chief Kunle Ademoyi was a powerful businessman who had built an empire in real estate. He owned several luxury hotels, estates, and shopping malls. People respected him not just because of his wealth, but because he was a man of influence. His wife, Lady Fumi Ademoyi, was a former beauty queen who now spent her days attending social events, hosting lavish parties, and shopping in the most expensive boutiques in Lagos, London, and Dubai. The couple had one child, Daniel Ademoyi. From the moment Daniel was born, his parents spoiled him with everything money could buy. He had the best clothes, the latest gadgets, and traveled to exotic places even before he could pronounce their names. If he wanted something, all he had to do was point and it would be his. Unlike other children who were taught discipline, Daniel grew up believing the world revolved around him. He never heard of the word no from his parents. If a teacher scolded him in school, his father would make a phone call and the teacher would be fired. If he refused to do his homework, his mother would pay someone to do it for him. If he fought with other kids, his parents would blame the other child. By the time Daniel was a teenager, he had become arrogant and rude. He looked down on people he considered below his class. The drivers, cooks, and housemaids feared him because he insulted and maltreated them. If they made a mistake, he would throw things at them or report them to his mother, who would fire them immediately. At school, Daniel was untouchable. His classmates avoided him because he was mean and cruel. He bullied students from less wealthy homes, making fun of their clothes and their accents. Even the teachers feared him, knowing that any wrong move could cost them their job. His parents, blinded by love and wealth, did not see that they were raising a monster. They believed money could solve any problem, and Daniel was just being a boy. But little did they know that their way of raising him would come back to haunt them in the most terrible way. Daniel's behavior got worse as he grew older. Now in his early 20s, he was no longer just a spoiled child. He was a nightmare. His arrogance knew no bounds. He refused to go to university in Nigeria, claiming that Nigerian schools were for poor people. His parents, eager to please him, sent him to the best university in London. But even there, he refused to learn. He partied all night, disrespected his professors, and bribed his way through school. When he got bored, he would insult his lecturers, telling them, "I can buy this school if I want." His father kept sending him millions of naira every month, but instead of using it wisely, Daniel wasted it on luxury cars, designer clothes, and extravagant vacation. His mother, who often visited him, never corrected him. Instead, she encouraged his reckless lifestyle, saying, "My son must enjoy his life. He deserves it." Back in Nigeria, his father bragged about how Daniel would take over his business and empire. "My son is a king. He was born to rule. He doesn't need to suffer like I did," Chief Kunle would say proudly. But the truth was far from that. Daniel had no interest in business. He had no discipline, no skills, and no respect for hard work. He believed life would always be easy because of his parents' money. Then one day, everything changed. Daniel's reckless lifestyle continued until the day disaster struck. One evening, he was at an expensive club in London, surrounded by his so-called friends, young men and women who only stayed around because of his money. They partied, drank the most expensive champagne, and wasted money like it had no value. Daniel, in his usual arrogant manner, threw stacks of cash in the air, laughing as people scrambled to pick it up. "Money is nothing to me," he shouted. His friends cheered him up. They always cheered because they knew he would keep spending as long as they flattered him. But that night, something happened. As Daniel stepped out of the club, drunk and careless, he got into his Ferrari, ready to speed off. His so-called friends warned him, "Bro, you're too drunk. Let your driver take you home." But Daniel scoffed, "I can do whatever I want. Who will stop me?" He revved the engine and sped off into the night. The streets of London were empty, but Daniel drove recklessly, enjoying the thrill of danger. He laughed as he nearly hit a pedestrian. He turned up his music, letting the bass vibrate through his body. Then bam! In one split second, his entire world changed. Daniel had crashed into a police vehicle. The impact was massive. The front of the Ferrari was completely destroyed. His head hit the steering wheel and blood dripped down his forehead. The next thing he saw were bright red and blue lights flashing around him. Before he could understand what was happening, policemen dragged him out of his car. His vision was blurry, his mind dizzy, but he still had the audacity to shout, "Do you know who I am? My father will deal with all of you." The officers ignored him. They handcuffed him and pushed him into the back of the police car. For the first time in his life, Daniel was powerless. Back in Nigeria, Chief Kunle Ademuyi was having a peaceful evening when his phone rang. The moment he saw the unknown UK number, his heart skipped a beat. "Hello? Good evening, sir. This is the Metropolitan Police. Your son, Daniel Ademuyi, has been arrested for reckless driving and endangering public safety." Chief Kunle's hands shook. "What? My son? Impossible." "Sir, he is in serious trouble. He crashed into a police vehicle while drunk. He is facing heavy charges and bail has been denied." The words felt like a slap. Chief Kunle had solved all of Daniel's problem in the past with money, but this was different. This was not Nigeria, where money could silence anyone. Lady Fumi screamed when she heard the news. "No, my son cannot stay in prison. Do something, Kunle." Chief Kunle tried everything. He called lawyers, government officials, even the Nigerian embassy, but the UK police refused to bend. Daniel was going to face full consequences of his action. For the first time in his life, Chief Kunle felt completely helpless. Meanwhile, in London, Daniel was locked in a cold, dark prison cell. He had never felt so uncomfortable in his life. No soft bed, no expensive food, no servants to clean up after him. The reality of his situation hit him hard. For the first time, Daniel realized something. Money could not save him this time. Daniel had never known true hardship until the moment he stepped into that prison cell. The air was damp, the walls were stained, and the stench of sweat and urine filled his nostrils. The cell was small, cold, and had only a thin, dirty mattress on the floor. As he sat on the hard ground, a deep sense of humiliation washed over him. This was not his world. He was used to luxury, to comfort, and to being treated like royalty. But here, nobody cared about his wealth. He tried to speak to the guards. I need to make a phone call. My father is a billionaire. You can't keep me here. The guard, a tall, muscular man with a rough beard, simply laughed. You think money works everywhere. This is not Nigeria. Here you face the law. Daniel's stomach churned with fear. The worst part came when he met his cellmates. There were three of them, hard-faced criminals who had lived rough lives. One of them, a bald man with tattoo on his neck, looked at Daniel and smirked. "Rich boy, welcome to reality," he said in a mocking tone. Daniel ignored them at first, but soon he realized they weren't friendly. They made him do the dirty work, cleaning the toilet, picking up their leftovers, and sleeping near the door where the cold breeze blew in at night. For the first time in his life, Daniel was being treated like he was nothing. Back in Nigeria, Lady Fumi was a shadow of herself. Her once perfectly styled hair was now a mess. Her eyes red from crying. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. "My son is suffering, Kunle. We need to get him out," she sobbed. Chief Kunle was equally broken. He had tried everything, hiring the best lawyers, using his connection, even offering a hefty bribe, but nothing worked. The UK securities authorities were firm. Daniel would face trial and possibly serve time. For the first time, he regretted how he had raised his son. He had given him everything except discipline. He had made excuses for him, defended him when he was wrong. Now Daniel was paying the price. Lady Fumi, however, refused to accept it. "We have to go to London. We have to see him." Chief Kunle agreed. Within hours, they were on the next flight to London, praying for a miracle. By the time Daniel's parents arrived in London, things had gotten worse. Daniel had been in prison for 2 weeks, and the reality of his situation had finally sunk in. The arrogance that once defined him was gone. His designer clothes has been replaced with a dull prison uniform. His soft hands had calluses from cleaning floors. When he saw his parents, he burst into tears. "Mommy, Daddy, please get me out of here." Lady Fumi pressed her hands against the glass divider in the visitation room. "My son, look at you." Chief Kunle, however, was silent. His once proud son was now a broken boy. "Daniel, do you finally see what we were too blind to teach you?" he asked in a low voice. Daniel nodded, ashamed. He had spent days in that prison, thinking about his life, how he had mistreated people, how he had wasted every opportunity, how he had thought he was untouchable. But now he was just another prisoner. The trial date was set, and the lawyers made it clear Daniel was facing at least 2 years in prison. His parents begged, pleaded, but the law had to take its course. For the first time, Daniel realized something. His parents' money could no longer save him. In prison, Daniel had changed. He no longer demanded special treatment. He no longer looked down on people. Instead, he kept to himself, lost in deep thought. One day, he met an older prisoner, a Nigerian man who had been in prison for 5 years. The man noticed Daniel's misery and said, "Rich boy, if you ever get out of here, what will you do differently?" Daniel had no answer at first, but that night, as he lay on the cold mattress, he made a decision. If he ever got a second chance, he would become a better person. After months of legal battles, Daniel's sentence was reduced to 1 year on probation with community service. When he walked out of that prison, he was no longer the same arrogant boy who had walked in. He returned to Nigeria, but this time he wasn't interested in luxury. Instead, he focused on rebuilding his life. He apologized to the workers in his house, the drivers, the maid, people he had treated like dirt. He even went back to his old school and personally apologized to the teachers and students he had bullied. His parents were shocked. Their son had finally learned humility. Instead of taking over his father's business, Daniel decided to start an organization that helped young people stay out of trouble. He visited schools, talking to students about the dangers of pride and recklessness. Slowly, people began to respect him not because of his money, but because of his growth. One evening, Daniel sat with his parents. They had just finished dinner, and for the first time, there was peace in their home. Chief Kunle sighed. Daniel, I am proud of the man you are becoming, but I also regret how we raised you. Lady Fumi wiped a tear. We thought we were showing you love, but we were destroying you. Daniel smiled sadly. I don't blame you, Mom, but I have learned my lesson the hard way. His father nodded. A child who is never corrected will one day face a world that will not tolerate his bad behavior. And when that day comes, no amount of money will save him. Daniel had lost a year of his life, but he had gained wisdom. The world had broken him, but in that same breaking, he had been rebuilt into a better man. Remember, spoiling a child does not show love, it destroys them. A child who is never disciplined will grow up believing they can do anything without consequences. Money cannot save a person from the real world. Respect, humility, and good character are worth more than riches.